And a pattern like this is the sort of pattern that gets me up out of bed in the morning. Hi guys, a warm welcome back to Phil's Corner. Most of you know the drill by now, but for those that are new here, this is a channel all about football shirts. I basically talk about football shirts for a job, and I figured, why not make a YouTube channel? So this is what this is, just a conversation, a relaxed conversation about some topics to do with shirts. Today is a little bit different. We're going to be talking about training or pre-match shirts. But there's a few more things to mention before we get to that. Firstly, I want to say a huge thank you to my two sponsors for today's video, starting with Foot Fanatics. Now, Foot Fanatics are a really great site, particularly if you're a collector like me in the UK who has a fondness for South American shirts. And who doesn't have a fondness for South American shirts? Teams like Grêmio and Corinthians, Flamengo, Fluminense, all these great Brazilian club sides. Well, Foot Fanatics are a retail site which ships directly to the UK at really competitive prices. And just as I'm talking, I'll show you the site, I'll go through the site just to show you the kind of shirts you can get. Most excitedly for me, just this week, they've added Umbro's new third shirts for the various clubs that they work with in Brazil. And if you watch back in episode 2 or 3, I can't remember which one it was, but we talked about Umbro shirts in Brazil and how good they were. Well, they're back at it again in 2020. So Foot Fanatics are a place to get shirts just like that. But they also have really good shirts on their sales section, on their outlet section. And again, just as I'm talking, I'll show you the kind of prices we're talking about. We're talking about shirts here which are in the low teens, some of them, for really good new shirts. So it's well worth looking at Foot Fanatics. You can use the code FILS10 to get 10% off your order, and that's particularly useful to help cover some of the import tax which you'll have to pay. What I will say is that the exchange rate is really competitive, so actually by the time you factor in, as I say, the exchange rate and the good deals that you're getting, the import tax is a very small amount, and it scales up depending on how much you buy. So if you only buy one or two shirts, the tax is relatively low. It's a really good site. I've used it quite a lot personally. And as I say, I would vouch them any day of the week. So go and check out Foot Fanatics. And thanks to them for sponsoring this video. And thanks also to Mystery Football Jerseys. Again, a long-time supporter of this channel. They have a really good mystery box service. And mystery boxes are becoming really popular. There's lots of them popping up at the moment. Mystery Football Jerseys are one of the best at what they do. Excitedly, there's a themed subscription box which they're launching very soon. It's a really good idea actually as a gift, or for yourself of course. So Mystery Football Jerseys, thanks to them, and thanks to Foot Fanatics. Thanks to both those guys for supporting me on today's episode. I also want to say thank you so much to my new supporters on Patreon, and since the last video, a bunch more guys have signed up. I'm just going to shout out their names now. Thanks to Callum, Rick, Adrian and Steve-O, all those guys who have joined with Lucas and James who started off as supporters. So thank you to all those guys on Patreon. If you don't know what I'm doing on my Patreon, I've got a video which kind of runs through what we're doing there. And there's a really nice little community now which we're growing. There's exclusive content which is coming out regularly. Basically me sharing a lot of my secrets and skills that I've picked up working in the football media space. I feel really humbled to have such a good bunch of supporters so early on. So thanks to those guys. And if you are interested in Patreon, go and check out the link below to my Patreon. See if that's of interest. And if it is, your support would mean the world. We're going to go now to a bit of a Q&A. I like to do this at the start of most of my videos. And we've got some really good questions. I'm going to start actually with one from my Patreon, from the Slack group on my Patreon. And this is from Adrian, who says, what is your basic definition of player issue? I always thought of player issue being shirts that were match prepped for the player for the actual game and not sold to the public. Now Adrian, I think this is actually something which can be quite confusing, even for experienced collectors. So a player issue shirt, broadly speaking, I would define as a shirt that has the same specifications as a player shirt. That is the material, the construction, the details, which of course, as we know in recent years, has often actually been quite different to the replica shirts that you see. But within the player issue umbrella, if you like, I would also consider a match issue shirt to also be player issue, but of course distinct in that a match issue shirt is one that's directly issued to the player and will feature Again, potentially some even more different details. Certainly the sizing would be more bespoke to the player. So yeah, I think that terminology can be confusing because if you talk about a player issue shirt, that implies that it's been issued, of course, to the player. But most people, I think, don't necessarily mean that when they say player issue. If anything, they're talking about player specification shirts. You sometimes see the word authentic, but again, that's even more confusing, I think, because that implies that a replica shirt isn't genuine, isn't authentic. So I think I like to use player issue to mean those player spec shirts, if you like. But again, match issue shirts, which are very hard to find. I think the general rule, I would say, actually, if you're looking at shirts, match issue shirts don't just pop up. I mean, they do sometimes on eBay, and funnily enough, some clubs are much more free with their stock of match issue stuff than others. You know, you're not going to be finding Liverpool match issue stuff just on eBay unless the club are auctioning it off for charity. But if you're looking down the leagues, you will probably find, I mean, I've seen, I can't remember which club it was, it might have been Gillingham last year, a bunch of match issue stuff just came on eBay from the kit man, basically. So, you know, depending on who you're looking at, you could find match issue stuff, but most of the stuff you're going to see is player issue. And we'll do a video actually as well on player issue shirts soon, because I think it's quite interesting actually. A lot of people ask, is it worth getting a player issue shirt? So I think that's going to be coming up. If not the next episode, the episode after. But thanks for your question, Adrian. Question from YouTube, from Arnold, who says, another great video. Thanks a lot, Arnold. I just love how excited you are about football shirts. And yep, I certainly am. I was just wondering if there is any goal of your personal collection at the moment. It's an interesting question because that goal has shifted a lot. I mean, certainly when I started collecting, the goal was basically just to get shirts as cheaply as possible and then make a profit to then fund future sales. That then shifted when I find myself having a bit less time. And I kind of thought, actually, you know, if I wanted to do that, it kind of takes a lot of the fun out of collecting. So I then shifted the goal to be much more about the collecting side, much more about finding the shirts that I really like, getting a shirt from, you know, most countries and most brands. Now I would say my broad goal is to have a collection of shirts, which if someone was to ask me, you know, next week to open an exhibition, I could open an exhibition with the shirts. I could cover key touch points in shirt history, some of the kind of key developments and trends that we've seen, as well as my personal favourite designs. So I'm kind of thinking that, obviously that probably won't happen, but that's kind of my aim, I guess, with the collection. And as a kind of number, I like to have about 100 as a collection. I've got over that at the moment, and it feels quite hard to get rid of some at the moment. But yeah, it's a good question, Arnold. I think many people have different approaches. I'm certainly not a kind of maximum profit guy, or even kind of get as many shirts as possible. I like to be quite selective with my choices. Good question. Thanks, Arnold. Got a question here from someone with no vowels in their name, so I'll give it a go. Blizz Plitz. Thanks for your question here. They say, I went to buy a shirt on Kitbag after I saw you using them, and you said that their reviews on Trustpilot were really bad. People said they had non-existent customer service. And just to briefly touch on Kitbag, obviously like most companies, they've clearly been quite affected by the current crisis. But I will say that Kitbag definitely have had a few seemingly bad situations. I certainly saw those reviews myself as well when I shopped on there about a year ago, and I think they do struggle sometimes with customer service. One of the issues as well with Kitbag, and I don't know if they still do this, but I think they still do this, they aggregate all their reviews for every product and actually use that review on each of the individual product pages. And one of the issues with this, and not to go too deep into marketing, digital marketing, but essentially that's not as useful for the user because they're not seeing reviews for that actual shirt. And if you just have one bad product, say one product which just doesn't ship out in time, or there's an issue with it, you're then effectively negatively impacting all the products on your site. So they had a pretty bad structure for the reviews on their site anyway, which kind of highlighted really the issues they were having. But there are good things about Kitbag. What I would say is their worldwide delivery service is quite good. I had someone in New Zealand who was trying to get hold of a shirt, and Kitbag actually shipped to them at a really good price, where a lot of retailers wouldn't do that. And also their range of shirts is pretty decent. The prices, I would say, have lagged behind some of the other retailers we've seen, like M&M Direct, but they're still worth checking out. But I think it's a fair point to say that, you know, when you look at reviews, do take them into account. You know, they're there for a reason. Customer reviews, if they're genuine, are one of the best sources you can find accurate information to judge whether to shop at a particular site. Comment from Fox in the boxes here. Good video idea would be something with football kits in FIFA. And the funny thing is, I've really not been into FIFA for a few years now. I used to love FIFA growing up. And you know what, Fox in the boxes? I've not actually really enjoyed a FIFA game for quite a few years now. But about 2 or 3 years ago, I picked up FIFA again. I thought I'm going to get into Ultimate Team. I'm going to see what the fuss is all about. I kind of like the concept of it, but I found that really frustrating. Not only the heavy use of microtransactions, but even things like just the weekend league. The idea that you basically had to sink in, 30 games or whatever it was into a weekend just to qualify. On top of the gameplay, which is quite lacking. So anyway, this isn't a video review of FIFA. Thanks for your question, Fox in the Boxes. As I say, I won't rule it out in future, but I'm not planning to buy FIFA at this time. And finally, Anthony says, love the content. What's the most you spent on one shirt? And you know what, Anthony? I've not actually ever spent over £200. All my purchases have been under £200, which is a relatively small fry compared to a lot of people. Of course, if I was to get into match-worn shirts, I'd see me spending a lot more than that. But yeah, at the moment, I generally tend to stick under £200. And to be honest, the vast majority of my shirt purchases are under £100. I don't often go above that. But certainly some of my shirts I have, and I'm really happy with the prices I paid. And yeah, there's a few on my kind of wish list, which I'm kind of waiting or looking around for. Some of my Holy Grail shirts, which I'm kind of hoping I can snag for a deal under those prices. But yeah, thanks for your question, Anthony. And actually, he follows up the comment by saying it'd be interesting to see me go online, as I did with my last episode, and look at shirts that would cost more than £200. And you know what? I really like that suggestion, Anthony. Why not have, I don't know, the price of 2 PS5s, but only get Holy Grail shirts or something to that effect? I think I may do that for the next episode, Anthony. So look out for that. And yeah, let me know in the comments. Another thing I'd love to know, what are your Holy Grail shirts? Because I think that's a really interesting topic. I love hearing about that. But thanks so much to all you guys who asked questions on the last video and on Slack. But now let's talk about training and pre-match shirts. Today I'm going to run through my favourite training or pre-match shirts from 2020 so far. And it's a really fun list. There's some great designs. You've already seen 2 of them, of course, on camera as we speak. And it's an area which I've been more and more interested in. Of course, as someone who's been into shirts for a few years now, I've always had a passing interest. I've always kind of looked out with kind of half an eye at what's coming out. But more than ever, training and pre-match shirts are becoming an important part of a kit release schedule for a club or nation. It used to be that training or pre-match shirts were basically quite limited in scope. You'd see them for the big teams, but you'd rarely see bespoke designs. But then we saw a movement not so long ago where training and pre-match shirts became basically the area where a brand would go particularly crazy on. And you'd see designs which were, as flamboyant as this Nigeria pre-match shirt, often in colourways which weren't directly linked to a team, and patterns which completely broke all kind of rules when it comes to kind of pattern placement and logo placement, things like that. And a lot of people have commented on the fact that those training shirts and pre-match shirts were often tools that brands would use almost to test designs, almost to give designs a bit of a kind of test run to see how fans and the wider shirt community would respond. And it's really interesting, whether that is true or not for all of them. It probably isn't true for every case, but certainly for some cases that was true. And what's been really interesting in recent years particularly is that a lot of training shirts, I would argue, have been better than the actual home or away or third shirts. Of course, many people commented on that with England in 2018, where their pre-match shirt, which kind of had a bit of an Admiral 82 vibe to it, with a much more modern take with the graphic on it, and certainly much more of a colour impact than the home shirt, which was still quite a nice home shirt despite being plain. But anyway, a lot of people said, I wish that was the home shirt. I wish the pre-match shirt was the home shirt. So I think that conversation now, it's not an anomaly. It's quite common. And a bit of a spoiler, but I actually think this Nigeria pre-match shirt is better than their home or away kits. But we'll get onto that in a bit. So yeah, pre-match shirts, training shirts, I think are a really interesting area. But if someone was to ask me what have been my favourite ones this year so far, here is a list of 9. I've chosen 9 just because I like to mix it up and not just do top 10s. I think over the course of this channel we've done a top 6, 7, 8 and 10. I might be wrong. But let's do a top 9. And this is across the world, across all teams. Most of these are relatively major brands and teams, as you'd expect, because they tend to be the most interesting. But we'll start with number 9. Now, because of a combination of personal bias and I think justifiable reasons, I don't give United a lot of love on this channel. I don't give Man United a lot of love on this channel. But I really like their pre-match shirt this year. Now, this particular design, which I'm showing on screen now, is shared across a few different teams to other major Adidas teams. I think all of the major Adidas teams have this particular style with the middle graphic potentially switching places and obviously the colours changing. But I really like this example of a pre-match shirt which uses the club colours, so red and black, a classic combo for United. But I really think it impacts the design well. It actually lends itself to the design well. Just because you've got a design, sometimes when it goes in a particular colourway it doesn't work, but the striking combination of the red and black works well here. The word mark on the sleeves, you tend to see that a lot on training shirts where you'll see a team's name or nickname as a kind of a word over a particular area of the kit. I quite like that though. I think it looks good. And honestly, I just think when I look at that kit as a pre-match shirt, that is exactly what I want to see sometimes. You know, I also quite like pre-match shirts that go the other end of the spectrum. And again, there's a lot of that in this list. But I do like it when a pre-match shirt has the club colours in a different design, in a fresh design. And even though it is shared across multiple teams, I think United was actually my favourite of that particular template. So I wanted to give that a nod. Adidas, I think, have actually been quite good in two areas. One of them is pre-match or training shirts, and the other is goalkeeper kits. I really like their Adidas goalkeeper template. But yeah, United there at number 9. Next on the list at number 8 is Club America, and I've got the shirt next to me, which I'm going to get off the wall now. I really like this design, and we talked a few episodes ago about shirts that were based on sponsors. Well, this shirt is based, of course, on the Club America crest. Again, a subject we talked about before. I love the Club America crest. Now, ironically, despite the shirt basically being a giant crest, I actually feel the crest is a bit small there. I'd like to see the crest a bit bigger. But you know what? I really like the design. I like that the colours are consistent. They've not messed around with the colours of the crest. They've actually just blown up the crest. And I love how big it is. You know, they could have just done it a little bit bigger, maybe had it almost like a sponsor. The fact it's so big that it doesn't fit on the shirt, I think is quite fun. I like these little cutaways on the sleeve, which of course the Nigeria shirt has as well. And even just this little notch. There's no reason to have it there, but I think that looks nice on the collar. Funny how they've listed the the sponsors on the back, you know, in very relatively understated kind of white there. Honestly, I wouldn't have minded if they were much bigger and in whatever colour they like on the back, because it's quite a plain back. But I just really like this design. It feels like actually this design would have made a great goalkeeper kit. I think you really could have seen this on the pitch as well. And I think it's really effective. The contrast collar matches with the swoosh. There's just lots of nice things about this kit. And I like the Club America colourway. Both the vibrant yellow, which they've used in the past, but also this slightly more softer, creamier yellow. And I believe actually that this particular shirt was actually inspired by one of the shirts that Club America wore in the past as well. So it's nice to see a training shirt or a pre-match shirt that evokes an old kit of the past, but that is so different to their match kit, so it kind of feels its own niche. So that's Club America there. A really fun shirt in at number 8. Now at number 7, we're sticking with Nike, but we're going to Barcelona. And of course, Barcelona have had some great training and pre-match shirts in recent years. I'd say if I had to pick up one team actually who have had good or interesting training and pre-match shirts, I'd probably class Barcelona as a top 3. They've certainly been really interesting. Like the 2 shirts that have already been on this list, they've opted for club colours here, but with a much more psychedelic, hypnotic pattern here. Now, I don't know if this was directly inspired by Gaudi, I'd have to check that out. But of course, the famous architect and artist whose work is all over Barcelona. The other great detail, which you can see, of course, is on that section, that insert or cutaway on the sleeve, of course, with the famous Catalan flag. So that's a really nice usage of that area of the kit. I really like that. I believe the design is unique to the club as well, which is definitely worth a few bonus points. And a really good design, and that's only number 7, so really good stuff from Nike once again. Now we're going to give a shout out to Puma next, because we're going to go to Marseille and their pre-match shirt or training shirt. I can't remember which one it is. But they've got a design which is very similar to their away shirt, which is quite a popular design this year, with the kind of graphic of houses all over the kit. In this example, on this training shirt, it's white predominantly as a base with blue houses as opposed to the much darker navy houses on the away kit. And I really like this, where they've basically taken essentially the same design as the away kit, but completely changed the colourway, and I think it looks really effective. If anything, I would say this training shirt actually looks a bit better than the away shirt, for me personally anyway. Both great designs, of course, but I really like this particular colourway. I think it lends very well. It feels like very much like a Marseille kit still, because you've still got elements of the club colours there, but just done in a really fresh, interesting way. And yeah, it's using the same pattern as the away kit, but the pattern is so good and so fun and unique again to the club that I think it really lends itself well. So really good stuff from Puma in at number 6. Now at number 5 we have Arsenal. Now Arsenal, I'm just going to say it right now, have my favourite collection of training and pre-match wear across any club or nation. If I was to consider not just the shirts but the jackets, the tracksuit bottoms, all of that, I absolutely love what Arsenal and Adidas have done. They've used colours which aren't necessarily related directly to the club, but there's a wonderful kind of pastel palette across the board. You've got the peaches, the really light yellows. A lot of their gear has asymmetric elements with one colour on one sleeve, one on the other. Just aesthetically, that collection looks amazing. It doesn't matter what team it was. Even as a Liverpool fan, I'm just jealous of what Adidas have done with Arsenal. I mean, the kits are good enough anyway, aren't they? No one has been better with Adidas than Arsenal since their reunion. You can really tell that Adidas want to impress in North London, and they are impressing. They're impressing me, certainly. This peach design, the pattern isn't necessarily groundbreaking, but I really, really like the colourway. I love that peach shade. All the details there in black look good, alongside the white stripes and the sleeves. I just think, again, from a colourway perspective, now, I don't associate Arsenal with peach at all, but I really like it. I really like the aesthetic. I think when it comes to training or pre-match shirts, whilst I've talked a lot about shirts that keep in the same colourway as you'd expect for a team, it's also equally valid to go the other end of the spectrum and try something completely different that just looks nice. I mean, that's basically all it is, isn't it? You don't need to have a spiel about why you've chosen this colour. It's a training or pre-match shirt. That's all it is. Just get something that looks aesthetically pleasing, and this really does from Adidas and Arsenal. And it's my 5th favourite pre-match or training shirt of 2020. Now I couldn't stay away from Nike too long, could I? I've come back to Inter Milan at number 4. Now Inter actually had a few potential candidates for this list. They had some really good pre-match and training stuff. I really like this particular pre-match shirt though. The pattern, again, it won't kind of wow you necessarily straight away, but it's the colour combination and the way that the yellow details jump out on that black and blue base. The kind of overall aesthetic is reminiscent of one of the recent Inter Milan home kits which had yellow details. But I really think Inter, a bit like Arsenal, have a really strong collection as a whole. And one of the key influences of Inter's away shirt this year was the Memphis design movement. The Memphis design movement was really foundational and influenced a lot of subsequent designs and design movements and trends. And what's really cool is if you look at the collection of Inter shirts, both their match shirts, but of course also their pre-match and training stuff, you can see more of what they're trying to do. Actually, the collection or the design inspiration makes a lot more sense when you consider the designs of these pre-match and training shirts. So I think when you look at the collection as a whole, it's one of the best, I think, of this year. And there is actually a tie. There's a reason, of course, as I say, with the Milan connection. And I really like this particular design. It's not the wackiest of the bunch of their training shirts, but I think it really works well. It's effective. It's a nice complement to the home with that added addition of the yellow, separating it from the home kit in a different way. And again, I just think Nike's construction there, where you've got the side detail on the sleeve, looks really strong, alongside the collar, which there's no kind of fuss or frills about. That is my 4th favourite pre-match or training shirt of 2020. In at number 3, I kind of hinted at this earlier, but this is Arsenal again. This is how much I like Arsenal's pre-match and training wear this year. We've got their wonderful yellow, or it's almost a kind of limey yellow. I don't know exactly how it's classified, but I'd call it yellow, with peach on one side and a kind of lighter, steely blue on the other side. Like I mentioned before, it's asymmetric in its design, but I really just like the colours, guys. I mean, the thing is, again, whilst Arsenal have had yellow kits in the past, they've been a much more kind of golden yellow, not this kind of shade of yellow. But that's fine. I don't think it needed to be in any other colour other than what looks good. I think that ultimately is the approach. I really like that approach in Adidas and Arsenal. They've not particularly tried to worry about tradition when it comes to training wear, because you don't need to. I think that's really effective if it looks good, and it does look good. It does look good in this case for me. I love the aesthetic. I think even just the fact that you could take this example at number 3 and their example at number 5, you've got two different sorts of training tops or pre-match tops, but they look equally good, they look equally effective, they do something a bit different, but they both look good. So Adidas and Arsenal, I can't speak highly enough of what they've done this year, and I couldn't help but put 2 of their training shirts on this list of 9 kits across all clubs. That's how much I like them. We're down to the top 2, and there's been a lot of Nike in this list. That is not going to change, because at number 2 we've got South Korea's pre-match shirt. Now this particular design, you will remember, it feels like a long time ago now, but back, I think it was February or March this year, we saw the new South Korea home and away kits, which were some of the best of this year by far. You had the kind of tiger striped away, which was gorgeous, and then a really, really nice home kit, which used elements of the flags and had a great gradient, and the colours were really good. But the pre-match shirt stole a lot of people's hearts as well, and I love this design, quite literally wavy in its aesthetic. But also what I like is that you've also got an element of kind of tiger stripes. There's definitely that kind of theme, almost poking beneath the first layer there. Just a combination of colours, again those colours which you'll see on the home kit, that really nice vibrant lighter shade of red in amongst the almost kind of blue, grey, white kind of tone, with the white and black. A lovely combination of colours, a lovely design, a unique design to the nation. And as a collection, South Korea had probably one of the most talked about of this year. Certainly, you know, from a kit perspective, they were, I would say, close to Nigeria in terms of the level of interest for the nation. Not nearly as much as 2018 in Nigeria, but I think South Korea probably come the closest, I would say, to reaching that level of hype and interest amongst the wider shirt community. And the pre-match shirt's really good. I definitely am looking out for this still, and I'm hoping to pick this up alongside the home and away kits at some point this year. But really good stuff from Nike. And of course, I'm going to go straight into number 1 now, because I'm wearing my favourite pre-match or training shirt of 2020. And I absolutely love the design so much that I will put my neck out and say that I prefer this head and shoulders above the Nigeria home kit or the Nigeria away kit. That's how much I like this pre-match shirt. As I'm talking about it, I'm going to show you some close-ups on screen so you can see the kind of things I'm talking about. The crest, I really like this crest, and it's an interesting decision. They've basically taken away, it's almost like a cutout alternate crest. But what's really cool is you've got the design poking through underneath it, underneath the ring of the crest. I honestly really like that aesthetic. It's quite an interesting decision to basically use a completely different crest on a shirt, on a pre-match shirt. But again, from an aesthetic point of view, I think it looks really good. I see no reason you shouldn't do that, and I think it adds a nice detail. Other details, you do have the Super Eagles and Niger word marks on the sleeve detail. That, to be honest, is probably one of my least favourite elements of the shirt. I don't think it needs to be there particularly. I think you could leave that in a colour. But having said that, when I talk about the Niger word mark, it is really, really nice on the front of the shirt. You can see there in that bespoke typeface, it really is a very edgy, a very cutting kind of typeface, but it looks really nice. I love that across the front. There's also a really nice patch on the back, on the lower back. And of course, the best thing I've saved to last, that is this pattern on the front. And a pattern like this is the sort of pattern that gets me up out of bed in the morning. I love the aesthetic. It's really interesting. There's this kind of floral, leafy aesthetic, which incidentally is very similar to the training wear that we saw from 2018 and even again in 2020. And I really like this ongoing theme that we've had with Nigeria's collections with Nike. I think just from a colour balance perspective, it's really good that they've got this white base with all the black dots across, and then the green leaves and flowers and elements pop so nicely on that white base, with again lighter shades of green and red as well. just aesthetically it is absolutely stunning. It's kind of the other end of the spectrum to what we saw from Arsenal on this list, where you've got the much plainer designs, broadly speaking. This is much crazier, but not crazy for the sake of crazy. It's crazy, but really, really good to look at, in my opinion. And honestly, guys, when I received it, when I bought this week, I knew I was going to like it, but when I received it in person, I actually changed my plan and decided to do this as a video because I wanted to talk about this straight away. Really, really happy with this. Absolutely great shirt, and it's just typical Nike, really. This year, Nike have flat out dominated in a lot of areas, particularly with pre-match and training shirts, as you can see on this list. And this typifies really Nike's success this year. There you go, guys. There's my favourite 9 pre-match or training shirts. I'd love to know if I've missed your favourite on the list. Do comment if there's any of which I should have added. And let me know what you think of the list, whether you'd put something else at number 1, whether you've bought any pre-match or training shirts this year, which ones have you picked up. But thanks so much for watching, and thanks once again to my sponsors for this video, Foot Fanatics and Mystery Football Jerseys, and also my most recent supporters on Patreon. Thank you so much to those guys. If you are interested in supporting my work and supporting me through Patreon, do check out the link in the description. But that's all for today's episode. Look forward to chatting to you in episode 14. But thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you soon.